So, welcome to Beauty of Colors podcast, Brent. It's great to have you on the show.
Excited to be here. This is great.
So, Brent, tell the listeners about you and what started you on this journey.
Well, it's kind of funny that I never in a million years thought I'd be doing anything like this, to be a professional spiritual teacher, energy healing for over 20 years now, not even on my radar. Because growing up, I was pretty much a nerd. I loved Dungeons and Dragons and Star Wars and Star Trek and all that kind of stuff, right? And when I went to college at MIT, I discovered the internet, which sounds funny today, but back in the 80s, no one had ever heard of it, right? And so long story short, I made that the focus of my studies. And by the time I was in graduate school at MIT working on my PhD, I had become one of the world's leading internet networking experts. One of the cool things that I did with one of my lab mates was in 1994, we sent the first ever live synchronized audio video stream over the web.
Wow.
So we were doing really cool stuff. Yep.
Okay.
But I didn't finish my PhD. So I am proudly an overeducated dropout. Because when the internet boom hit, I'm like, wow, this is my gold rush. So long story short, I left MIT, moved to California, recruited my lifelong best friend, and we started a website company. And we had a lot of success at first. Our first website was for the launch of the Sony PlayStation. So we did the first website for Disneyland, Nissan Motors, who were doing this amazing stuff. In fact, but I got bored with the web really fast because it was still very primitive back then. So we created an online game company to create a brand new type of video game based on my graduate school research in internet networking. For the gamers that are listening, today we call them MOGs, or massively multiplayer online games. But I created the world's very first true MOG. It was called Underlight. But the strain of bootstrapping two startups right at the heart of the internet boom led me to have a devastating health crisis. And so long story short, I was in terrible pain. I could barely work. I had to move in with my parents. I mean, it was really, really bad. And I spent 3 years in conventional therapy until finally I got in to see the head doctor at the Cleanne Johnson clinic, which is one of the top physical therapy clinics in the world. And I was so excited. I thought he'd have some kind of cure or solution. I was like, wow, well, how do we fix this, right? How do I get my life back? And he just looked at my medical records and he was just like, well, I'm sorry, son, but there's nothing I or a doctor can do. You'll never be out of pain and you'll never be able to go back to work. And he said something like, I'm going to do you a favor, recommend you for lifetime disability now. And I was 27 years old. And they told me, never come back. We don't ever want to see you again. And when I told my best friend and business partner this, I thought he'd be all, hey, Brent, hang in there. We'll get through it together. Instead, he used that as an excuse, fired me from the companies I had founded, played a bunch of legal games, stole the website and the video game company from me, sold them. He made what, $3-4 million. And I was left on disability with horrible chronic pain, living with my parents with no hope. And so that was the first dark night of the soul. The next 5 years, we'll fast forward very quickly. The doctors gave up on me, so I turned to alternative medicine. I started going to get acupuncture, herbs, cleanses, magnets. I mean, all this stuff, right? Nothing helped me. All I did was run up a huge credit card debt. And I had an experimental surgery in 2003, mostly because I was told I had to do that to extend my disability. And the surgery got botched and my right arm was paralyzed. And so about 6 months later, I went to see this crazy healer lady named Terry. And she had some process of using theta brain waves to access the subconscious for healing. And I was like, whatever, but I wanted to try everything. And my Aunt Lauren was her good friend and kept nagging me. So I went. And long story short, I spent about an hour with Terry. She did this subconscious block clearing with me. And at the end of our session, I'm just like, okay, thanks, lady. She's like, no, Brent, we're going to heal your arm. I'm like, yeah, sure, right? You and what army, right? And so she kind of went into a trance for a minute, and I'm looking out the window thinking about what I want to have for lunch, right? And there was this loud crack and pop in my elbow. And she opened her eyes and said, okay, Brent, let's try your arm. And I was like, oh my God, I can't repeat what I actually said because I know this is going on the radio, but it was a little more adult version than that. And that was, I could move my arm again. It was just like the surgery never happened. And so that was when this diehard scientist, engineer, skeptic, rational guy decided to devote his life to energy healing. And that's what I've been doing. It's 20 years now that I've been doing this full time. And my goal is simple. I want to take some of this woo-woo stuff, present it in a way that's going to be a little more approachable for people that aren't already in.
Okay.
And so I want to bring some science, some rationality, very, very much similar to what Joe Dispenza does.
Mm-hmm.
Though I'll admit I'm a lot deeper into left field than he is. I'm much more into the more esoteric, deeper aspects of the spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to bring this as technology to the world, not as woo-woo. And there's nothing wrong with woo-woo. I love woo-woo. Some of my best friends have robes and crystals and, you know, all that Buddha statues. That's great. I got no problem with that. But I'm an engineer. I'm a scientist who just happens to do energy here. And I want to explain this in ways that people can understand and create technology that is useful. That's important to me, that things that work, that create real results in your life.
So, Brent, you wrote a book called Movement Feedback Holography. What
Yes.
is that? What is that? And what does that mean? And how did you get it started?
That's a great question. And so just a little bit more of the story,
Mm-hmm.
because it wasn't like I had one session with a healer and I lived happily ever after.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a Hollywood movie, right? This is real life.
Mm-hmm.
So based on the work I learned from Terry, I was able to heal some of my injuries, not everything.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to come off disability, start a business doing life coaching and energy healing. I started to make money. I got married. I got divorced. And then I had a horrible financial crisis and ended up bankrupt. And this was after I'd been a full-time healer for 5 years. And my dating coach had referred me to kick me up the food chain to who we called the master. His name was Carl. And it was the day after I declared bankruptcy, I had my first session with Carl. And that was possibly the single lowest point of my life. I really thought my life was over. And I met Carl down by the beach, and he took me down to rent rollerblades. And he literally videotaped me rollerblading around a parking lot at Venice Beach. And then we sat in his car and watched the tape. And long story short, he kind of ripped me a new one. Was telling me all these things. This is wrong with your energy. This is wrong. And, after about an hour, he sent me home, and I was upset with Brian. I'm like, dude, you do know I just went bankrupt, right? And so I chewed out Brian for recommending me to this crazy old guy. And Brian said, Brent, I hear you. Do me a favor, give me 3 weeks.
So Brent, who is
Yes.
Brian? Is Brian the
He was
guy?
my dating coach. He was my dating coach.
Okay.
Yes.
But
He had introduced me to Carl.
Okay.
Basically, I was such a mess. Even Brian couldn't help me.
Okay.
So he sent me to Carl. And I was pissed because I had paid Carl $500 for the session.
Mm-hmm.
And Brian said, Brent, relax, give it 3 weeks. If you feel this was of no value to you, I'll make it up to you. I was like, okay, Brian, fine. And it didn't take 3 weeks. It took 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
And long story short, something changed in my energy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a whole miraculous story. We don't want to, don't need to get into the drama. But within 3 days, I had made nearly $50,000.
Whoa.
And it completely changed my life.
Oh.
And it took me 5 years to understand what he was doing. No joke. And that was the basis of my system now called Awakening Dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
And the movement is pretty simple in theory. It's called movement feedback holography. It's a process of direct embodiment. That the reason a lot of us struggle in life is that we've squeezed the consciousness, the life force out of our body. And we do special movements, handshaking, rollerblading, there's a whole bunch of them, along with what they call a quantum field entrainment meditation. So there's a physical aspect and a meditative brain aspect, along with feedback on the energy patterns that emerge in them. And there is some crazy magic to it, because again, I crushed MIT, lots of academic accomplishments, did a bunch of stuff people had never done before. Took me 5 years to figure out what Carl was doing. Okay. But eventually I figured it out, and that's what we call movement feedback holography. And the way I would describe it is that for many people, the biggest thing holding them back is they're no longer have consciousness in their body like they used to. A simple thing would be, for most of us, we can move our fingers pretty easily, right?
Oh, yeah.
But can you do that with your toes? Most people can't.
Yeah, that's true.
And just so you know, anatomically, there's very little difference between the fingers and toes. We got pretty much the same bones and muscles and tendons. There's no anatomical reason why we can't move our toes like our fingers.
Well, don't we? Because we use our fingers more than our toes. So
yes.
we move it a little bit more than our toes, because when your toes is in the shoes or whatever
yes.
you have on, it's very difficult to move it at the time.
That's right.
Our hands were constantly moving and the fingers are moving as well.
And that is what happens is largely due to wearing shoes and socks and walking around on artificial surfaces our whole life. We squeeze the life force out of our feet. And the result is we can't feel them. We can't move them. But if you look at people that say grew up in the jungle, they all got monkey toes. They can spread their toes. They can grip with their toes. It's very easy for them to feel their toes. And the toes is just one example. It goes through our whole body. And what basically, to put it in simple terms, I was so deep in my head, I had almost totally disconnected the life force from my body. That's why I got sick. That's why I was in pain. That's why I was poor. What Carl showed me through the movement was this process of direct embodiment to put the life force back in. And it was truly life-changing.
So it's kind of like the law of attraction.
Kind of, yes. And the way I would describe it very, very quickly would be, I see this as technology. That's what I am. I'm an engineer, a technologist. I just happen to work in the medium of human consciousness. I used to work with electronic computers. Now I work with the human nervous system, the human body. And what I see it is there's 3 generations of consciousness technology. And this is a really useful model for anyone doing self-improvement to understand what you're doing and what it might do for you. That the law of attraction, the secret, Think and Grow Rich, those are what I would call your first generation technology. Right? It's been around for at least 100 years. Positive thinking, mantras, focus on the positive, vision boards, masterminds, right? There's nothing wrong with it. It's just, it's clunky old technology. Just like a Model T car was great 100 years ago, but you wouldn't want to drive one today now, would you? Right? It would work, but it's old technology. It's slow. It's unreliable. It's uncomfortable. And so most people find your typical secret law of attraction just doesn't work that well. We've all heard the promises and seen the emails and the sales pitches, but for 99% of people, it does very little. What I was introduced to when I met my first healer, Terry, was what I would call second generation technology. This would be things like hypnosis, NLP, Psych-K. And the difference is the second generation technology can directly access the subconscious. That's the difference. And so we tend to have a higher success rate. The success rate with first generation is 1%-ish. With the second generation, using muscle testing, subconscious clearing, hypnosis, things like that, our success rate goes up to 10-20%. And we start to see medical miracles, like when my elbow instantly. I've had dozens of clients that have healed from cancer. I've had people heal broken bones overnight, lifelong asthma disappear. I could go on and on. Well over 1,000 miracles I've seen. But again, it's not 100%.
So it's more of like a self-healing kind of thing.
It can be. It can be. That the second generation technologies are worth learning and using for sure. For most people, the results are oriented around physical issues. So if you had cancer or diabetes or something, that's probably one of the first things I would use. It does work very well for that. What it can't do is it can't get you out of your head. And for most people, it can't build confidence or self-esteem or help you make money. And so what I discovered from my late mentor, Carl, was this third generation technology, this direct embodiment.
So we're talking about a first, a second, and a third.
Yes.
So you're focused on the third and not the second.
I teach both.
Both. Okay.
I teach about 50-50. I don't spend a lot of time on the first generation because I'm like, hey, watch The Secret, read Think and Grow Rich, you're set, right? Everything you need to know about the first generation. It's all in there. The second generation, I do teach people how to access the theta wave, get to the subconscious, do trauma clearing and healings, yes. Because again, it works very well for a lot of physical healing issues. It can create many miracles, so it's absolutely worth doing. But there are some things it can't do. The way I would say it is very simple. I'm living in Las Vegas right now. If I want to go to Tokyo, there's not just one technology that gets me there. I'm going to walk to my car, drive my car to the airport, get on an airplane, fly across the Pacific, land at the airport, get in another car, go to the hotel and walk up to my room, right? So for a lot of us in life, we will use some combination of different technologies to get to where we want to go. But I am mostly focused on the third generation because The way I would put it is I've developed some really cool second gen technology, but it's not novel like it was 20 years ago. There's a lot of people teaching how to clear blocks and get to a theta wave and do energy healing. So I've just made it a better technology, faster, easier, more powerful. In the same way that if you go buy a Porsche 911 Turbo, it works on the same principles as that Model T. Internal combustion, right? Cylinders, drive shaft, etc. It's just a much more evolved technology. It's faster, it's safer, it's more fun, it's more comfortable. But the third generation is what I personally focus on because for better or for worse, I'm the only person that my late mentor ever gave permission to teach and practice this. So I feel I'm sort of honor bound in an old-fashioned way to carry this and bring it to the world because I want to make sure this is done right. And it's really a combination of the movement. There is a meditative aspect we call quantum field entrainment or beaming, and as well as deep spiritual study, what we in the East call Advaita Vedanta. In the West, it's called awakening or non-duality. They sort of work together. And the goal is pretty simple, to show people their true self, to get you out of your head with all these stories and myths and ideas and traumas, back into your body, fully immersed with divine energy. Because when you're living your authentic self, success tends to come easily. And that's exactly what I experienced. I had been giving the same talks, the same interviews, teaching the same classes for 5 years. I had one movement session with Carl, and boom, I started to have a lot more success. My clients healed faster. My phone rang off the hook. My classes filled. And it is not a logical thing. It doesn't make sense to the. And I would say for everyone, don't believe anything I'm saying just because I'm saying it. I would love for everyone to have their own experience and then decide for yourself if this is real or not. Because if you had gone through a time machine and taken Brent in, say, 2002 and told me all this stuff would happen, I would have laughed at you. I would have thought, where's the hidden camera? Is this a joke, right? I would not have believed this was real. So I encourage people again, check it out, have your own experience, see what you feel when you do this. Just do your best to leave your preconceptions at the door. That's all.
Does the movement feedback holography, does it have to be taught by somebody who's experienced, or anyone can do it on their own, or is it just taught by you? Or
it's something that you need to start with someone who is an expert that knows what they're doing. And honestly, that's not too much different than any powerful skill, that you need a teacher to show you how to do it, but it doesn't take a lot of training. A couple weekends with me and people are often, and from that point, it's just a matter of practicing and building your skill. It's a combination of getting life into your body and really identifying with the true self. And it's fascinating to me that, I follow a lot of great authors and spiritual teachers, and honestly, we're all teaching the same thing. We just have our own angles and vocabulary. I love Neil Donald Walsh. I love Michael Singer. There's so many people I could talk about, right? And I read their work and I love it because I'm like, yeah, these guys are teaching the same thing from a different perspective. And that's so wonderful because we all have a different audience of people that resonate with our approach and style. And so I'll warn everyone, I'm not for everyone. I'm kind of intense. I'm obsessed with the truth. I have no time or patience for nonsense and crap and filler, right? I'm very much an engineer in that way. I just want to do what works. And if that's you, you might want to check it out.
So do you work with a lot of mental people who are going through mental illness, people who feel that their life is not going right and they want something better?
Absolutely. Yes, I would say now, I don't work a lot of people with really severe mental illness.
Okay.
You do need to be at a certain level of functionality to do this work.
Okay.
So the people I do the best with are people who are very much like I was 5, 10, 20 years ago. You're intelligent. You work hard. You have some skill. You can create value in the world, but things just aren't clicking for you. You're just, you have a lot of what I call close but no cigar syndrome. You've come very close to success with money, with career, with romance, with your financial goals, but it never seems to click. And you look at your life and you go, I really feel like I was meant for more than this. And so if that's you, this is why I'm here on this earth, that I've been to hell and back so many times. I got like millions of infernal frequent flyer miles. And I just want to help other people to shortcut the pain and the suffering. That for people listening, if you really want to learn this all the same way I did, go for it. Just realize it's about 30 years in hell to get there. But if you'd like to take a shortcut to learn from my mistakes and my teachers instead of your own, that's what I'm here for. To go, hey, if you do this, this will happen. Just like when I went to MIT, I couldn't have figured out all this math and science on my own. It took centuries of brilliant people to figure it out, right? It took thousands of years to build this knowledge, but it only took me 4 years to learn it. And, I would say that just a few hours of doing movement was more valuable to me than 4 years at MIT, because they didn't teach me the things that were really important. I remember one of my teachers had, I went to his class because he had sent an email that had a really interesting claim. It said, if you were to offer me $1 billion in cash to lose my understanding of awakening, I would laugh at you and say no. And I thought it was a come on, right? I'm like, hey, that's clever, right? I didn't think it was serious. And I went and I studied with him and experienced my own awakening. And I came out the other side going, oh my gosh, he wasn't kidding. That we're so much mired in this idea of we got to make life be the way we want it to be, right? I need more money. I need more health. I need more love. I need more life. I need less pain, whatever it is. And what I want to offer to everyone is you're missing half the game. There's nothing wrong with learning a skill, with working hard, with investing, with having a job. That's all great. That's part of life. But really, if you can understand the truth, that the true nature, the real you on the inside is not a man or a woman, is not a soul, is not a spirit, none of that. Those are all nice stories. But when you connect deeply to the truth of your authentic self, then it doesn't matter as much what you do. This is one of the reasons law of attraction teachers will say, do what you love. There's a hidden reason for that. It's that when your energy is aligned, when you're living as your authentic self, it doesn't matter what you do, you will find success. So don't sweat as much over, do I take this job or that job, right? Do I buy this stock or that stock? That is part of life. Do your due diligence. But ultimately, it doesn't matter. Because if you're aligned with your inner truth, if your body is full of life, if your mind is clear of myth and story, then almost anything you do, you can become incredibly successful. People will like you more. And I mean, I've been through the ringer. I've had cancer. I had Lyme disease for 17 years. I had undiagnosed autism for over 40. I've suffered from severe chemical poisoning. I had a close friend die of a drug overdose. I mean, I could go on and on with all the things I've been through. But honestly, none of that matters. What matters is I learned a lot of really important stuff on this journey. And I would love to share it with the right people that resonate with me and my style. Because again, I'm not for everyone. But I also like to think that's why God made more than one of us.
Yeah, that's true.
We are, at least the highest level teachers, we're all teaching the same thing. So go with the one that resonates with you. It's really that simple. You're going to learn all the same stuff. Doesn't matter. You can read the Bible, you can read the Gita, the Vedas, the, the Lotus Sutra. It's, to me, I see the same messages everywhere, which I think is a pretty beautiful thing.
So, Brent, where can the listeners get a copy of your book?
So anybody that is interested, just go to my website. It's awakeningdynamics.com. And what I want to offer to everyone is I have a free Healathon live webinar I do several times a year. You're more than welcome to buy my book on Amazon Kindle, no problem. Just put in my name, Brent Michael Phillips, or put in the title, Movement Feedback Holography. It's $4.99. But anybody that wants to come to my webinar, I will give it to you for free. Because on the webinar, I'll have more time. I can talk about the technology. I can do some interactive processes. I'll show you how to check for blocks. We'll do healings on everyone. I'll bring you into the quantum field. I'll demonstrate movement. Because what I really want is for people that are interested to help you to have your own experience before you have to spend any money or make any commitment. Try it. See what happens. I'll give you the book for free. Again, or buy it from Kindle. I'm cool either way, right? But I would love to share this with the people who are really going to benefit from it. So you don't have to go through the same kind of hell I did to get to the same place. I really believe that's why I'm here.
So, Brent, when you say a seminar, is that virtual or is that where
It's
you?
virtual.
Oh, it's virtual.
Yes.
Okay.
I sometimes do them around Las Vegas
Mhm,
in a
mhm.
live room. So if you are in Las Vegas, just email us, go to the website, just ask. If I have a live room coming up, I'm happy to have you there. But for most people, because I have students and clients on every continent except Antarctica. So I got 6 of the 7. So I do most of my material online just because it's much more convenient for people. But I do some local live rooms, but mostly just around Las Vegas.
Okay. So, do you have any other resources, and what's your website? Could you tell the listeners your
Sure.
website?
The website again is awakeningdynamics.com. I have a lot of great resources there. First thing you want to do, click the big arrow, register for the free Healathon live webinar.
Mhm.
After that, there's a link to my YouTube channel. I've got, 100 some videos to, enjoy all sorts of cool content. I have a spiritual power quiz to help people. What I've discovered is every person has an often hidden spiritual power. Part of my job is to help you identify what is it and how do we develop it. There's a lot of great free resources there. And
Mhm.
for people that want to go deeper, there's a link for private sessions, intensive trainings, downloadable programs. I've been doing this for over 20 years, so I've got a lot of material, a lot of support, and I think most importantly, an amazing community.
Okay.
I have a lot of wonderful students and clients. We have practice groups 2 or 3 times a week, masterminds, movement sessions, meditation sessions. There is something going on in our community almost every single day of the year round, between me and my students. And again, for those of like mind, we would love for you to join us.
Okay. And Brent, are you working on your next book, or are you working on maybe a part two to this book? Or
I am working on something a little different.
okay.
Right now, what I'm working on, I'm going to be developing a book as well as a YouTube series
Mhm.
on deep healing of trauma.
Okay.
And it's going to be a combination of using theta wave entrainment, movement, as well as EMDR
Mhm.
to help people, to give them some resources, to give you things you can do on your own at home without spending any money, to help people overcome the traumas. Because what I found is that's the thing that holds us back. These powerful experiences of pain and loss, some in the womb, some in childhood, some as adults.
Mhm.
That's the thing we need to address to set us free. So that's what's coming next. Though I don't have a time frame, I'm still in the research phase right now.
Okay, sounds great. So, do you have any last words for the listeners on to help them along their journey in life?
Yes, I would say for all of us, we all live in prisons constructed out of what we think we know. And I look back at my life and I go, that's absolutely true. And if this sounds too good to be true, that's fine. If I went back in time with my smartphone, they would think it was too good to be true. But I could pull it out of my pocket and go, look, guys, this is real, right? They might burn me at the stake, but that's my goal. I know this may sound too good to be true, or you think it won't work for you. See if you can set that aside just long enough to have your own experience. If you think it won't work for you and you don't do it, you're right. Things you don't use will never work for you. When I had my first session with Terry, when my elbow healed, I didn't think she could help me. I thought that was ridiculous. Some woo-woo faith healer make a difference? Oh my God, seemed silly, but it changed my life. And when I was bankrupt and desperate, having some crazy old guy videotape me while I rollerbladed, that couldn't possibly help, right? It seemed insane. But looking back, those were 2 of the most important things I ever did. And honestly, I only did them because I was desperate. So if you're desperate, okay, use that, give it a shot. If you're not desperate, here's your invitation. You can do it now, or you can wait until you're desperate. Take your pick.
Okay, well said, Brent. Thank you for being on Beauty of Colors podcast.
Oh, this has been wonderful. This has been great.